here we are again. This episode is going to be a bit faster paced and shorter than some other episodes because the school year is starting to get the better of me, and I think possibly my students as well. But we're still going to cover everything about flutter tonguing, from the basics through advanced issues to think about. And before we get into that, like, comment, subscribe, share. Thank you. I think of flutter tonguing kind of like the extended technique of yesteryear, because it is an extended technique, but flute players have been doing it for decades already, and it's one of the very gentlest extended techniques. Basically, if you can roll your R and then you get good airspeed through that, then you put that airstream into your flute. That's what it takes to make a flutter. So, and there you go, that's your basic flutter. Now, they say that rolling your R's is genetic, and there are some people who can't roll their R's. But if you can, even for a fraction of a second, don't give up on your flutter. I've had multiple students come to me and say, I can't roll my R, but we can get them to do it just for a fraction of a second. And that means they can practice it. Your tongue is a group of muscles that can be trained like any other group of muscles. So if we can just extend that rolling their R through a few seconds, then get the airstream going, then put it into their flute. I have had students go from no tongue fluttering ability to a great flutter, even very advanced students. So don't give up prematurely on being able to flutter with your tongue. If you simply know that you can't roll your R's, don't worry, that doesn't mean that flutter tonguing is off the table for you. You just have to use the back of your tongue instead of the front of your tongue. So I do have friends who can't flutter with the tip of their tongue, but they use the back of their tongue in their throat, like when you gargle or when you say German or French R's. You can train that to sound almost interchangeable with what a flutter is like using the tip of your tongue. And in fact, I know one or two people who use the tip of their tongue for the high register and the back of their tongue in their throat for the low register, because it's a little easier for them to control. So why would they make that choice? That's a great question, and that takes us into advanced topics of flutter tonguing. Advanced flutter tonguing was never explained to me. It's just something I figured out through trial and error, as I think most flute players do. But what you realize as you flutter a lot is that you have to use your tongue a little differently in the high register versus the low register. If I'm flutter tonguing in the very top register, my tongue has to be very active and fast and forward. It's like a helicopter, it's going really fast, it's at the front of my mouth. If it's too far back, if it's too gentle, we don't get a good flutter. It kind of sounds wimpy and all blends together. So you have to have an active, forward, kind of hard, aggressive, fast flutter tongue in the top register. In the bottom register though, if you use that kind of tongue, it's very disruptive to the airstream. If I just jump from the top of my register to the bottom, you can see it doesn't work at all. So when I'm in the low register, my tongue can be a lot gentler, a lot farther back. It will still be just as fast, but it won't be so aggressive. It's almost like it's just flapping in the breeze, like laundry that's drying. It's just nothing aggressive at all. But it still sounds like a really good flutter, just like the top register, because the airstream is acting differently in the low register. Again, if I think, oh, but I want it to be more powerful tongue, it just, the airstream is too disrupted. It doesn't want to create the low register all of that activity right at the front of your mouth is spreading the air more out, which you can't use well for the low register. Using your throat solves this problem for the low register because the disruption to the airstream is far back here in your throat. So you can really be aggressive with it and it can sound great in the low register, but you won't have to worry about the air going out too much this way like you do when you're using your tongue if your tongue is too active. If you can't roll your R's, you can use your throat flutter tongue in every register and you don't have to worry about changing it so much like you do with your tongue. The reason that most people choose to use their tongue, unless they simply can't, is that it's a more noticeable, active, aggressive articulation, especially in the very top register, than what you can get using your throat. But again, if you need to use your throat, just take the time and have patience and practice it, and you can get it to sound really great as well. I tend to have kind of a little motor sound when I use my throat because I haven't used it very much because I just vastly prefer to use my tongue. It's definitely a bit easier to do your throat flutter in the lowest register than the highest register. So if you can't roll your R's, just be prepared for that you're going to have to feel a little bit of change in your throat, but not nearly as much change as what you have to do with your tongue. But if you're using your tongue, get used to feeling that it's going to change a lot depending on register. It'll be forward in the front register and quite far back relatively, probably 1 to 2 centimeters back from my teeth sometimes in the lowest registers so that I can get the flutter out. So if I'm going to play a chromatic scale or something using flutter tongue going from high to low, I feel my tongue shift in my mouth quite a bit.